tale of Naropa is one of a very special individual obtaining unreal types of mental abilities and power. These abilities have been passed down through Buddhist Kagu masters by their oral traditions in the form of the 6 yogas for the last 1,000 years. We can conclude that they are mechanisms used by extraordinary individuals to achieve enlightenment under the teaching of a great master. Further exploration of the mental and physical abilities obtained from the meditative practices gives us a good picture of the unique type of people that can obtain them, along with the seemingly supernatural abilities they gain upon tapping into their ultimate consciousness with the aid of the 6 yogas of Naropa. Naropa was born into royalty by his mother Sarmati and his chieftain father Santivarman in Bengal, India, on the fire male dragon year of 1016 Common Era. The birthplace of Naropa was decided on before his journey back into samsara, as he remembered that upon re-entry to the human realm, he needed a suitable body in order to reach enlightenment in that lifetime, which is why he chose his mother Sarmati's womb for rebirth. He was seen as a gift to the community and was stated to profess a profound wisdom and loving kindness from the day he was born, and that just to gaze on him would elicit happiness and joy. Due to his obvious spiritual importance, the community believed that just as precious jewels should not be kept in filthy water, but placed upon an immaculate shrine, it did not seem benefiting for Naropa to dwell in the midst of worldly people, which caused his parents to send him to his rightful place among the practitioners of the Dharma. From stepping outside his homeland, Naropa's first journey was to the monastery in Kashmir, where he mastered the 5 branches of learning: medicine, arts, grammar, rhetoric, and epistemology from many great teachers. By the end of his stay in Kashmir, Naropa was fully recognized as a great scholar and already had a number of students following him home as their master. After leaving the monastery at Kashmir, Naropa returned home to the pressures of his parents to marry and produce an heir. Out of respect for his family, Naropa claimed that he would be married, but only if it did not hinder him on his path to enlightenment. So, the search commenced for Naropa to find a suitable wife, which eventually led him to a 16-year-old blonde Brahmin girl by the name of Vimala. They enjoyed 8 years of being happily married, but nevertheless, Naropa could not escape his own destiny and the permanent desire to attain his own spiritual enlightenment. This then caused him to divorce Vimala and pursue a fully spiritual life in a monastic environment. However, this would not be the last contact with Vimala, as she would later become one of Naropa's most advanced disciples and a devoted spiritual companion. With the newfound freedom, Naropa set out to the hermitage of Anandarama, where he became ordained as a novice by Abbot Buddhasarana and the Guru Jnana Prabha. As 3 years went by in deep study, he found himself mastering various Mahayana and Tatrayana philosophies. However, Naropa felt that there were still many missing pieces to his understanding, so he again set out on a spiritual journey, this time to Nalanda University in search of a great master. Naropa's time at Nalanda would provide him with some of his most crucial steps on his journey to spiritual enlightenment. Not long after his arrival, Naropa became chancellor of the university and was recognized as a highly skilled teacher in meditation training. After teaching for some time, he knew his true desire was still being left in the background until one day at Nalanda, when a woman appeared before him with 32 ugly signs, such as brown hair standing on end, a bulbous forehead, wrinkled and pitted face, coarse eyelashes, bloodshot, watery eyes, flat nose, twisted, gaping mouth, pendulous lips and buck teeth, lolling tongue, goiter, pendulous ear, coarse green skin, trembling, gnarled hands, and a hump on her back. As she was sneezing and yawning, crying and laughing, limping and leaning on a walking stick, she asked Naropa, "Do you know the words of the Dharma or the meaning of the Dharma?" Naropa replied, "I know the meaning," and the woman wept. Discouraged by this, Naropa then said, "I know the words of the Dharma," and then she laughed with joy. Then he asked, "Who understands the meaning of the Dharma?" She replied, "My brother, Tilopa." He said, "Please take me to him." She said, "Pray, meditate, and search." With this, she disappeared. From this encounter, Naropa had new reason to leave Nalanda in search of Tilopa, the great master who could lead him to realize the ultimate nature of his own mind. Naropa's search for Tilopa put him through a series of psychological and physical trials in order to gain the instruction from his desired master. Without much direction, he first set out to all the nearest towns, where he asked the villagers if they had ever heard of the great master named Tilopa. From town to town he searched, and continued with no results, and 12 times on his journey he encountered ferocious dogs, wild animals, poisonous snakes, terrifying women, and other adverse situations that hindered him on his path to meet his teacher and frightened him almost to death. These trials came to be known as the 12 fearful experiences of Naropa. Only when he understood that the reason he had not seen the Lama was because he had not purified his own negative tendencies first, did he gain some direction in his search. When almost all hope seemed to be diminished, Naropa encountered a small village where he had spoken of a fisherman by the name of Tilopa, although they were sure that this was not the master of meditation that Naropa sought after. Excited by the news, he raced down to the river to approach the fisherman. After some conversation, Naropa was sure that he had finally found the Tilopa he was looking for, and then asked him to take him as his student. Upon hearing this request, Tilopa looked Naropa up and down 3 times and explained, "No matter what angle I look at you, you seem to be of royal family. You look like royalty and speak like royalty, and yet you come here to be a student of a fisherman, one of a lowly caste. This is not at all proper," and began to walk away. Discouraged by this, Naropa began to follow Tilopa as he walked away from him. But to his dismay, no matter how fast he ran to catch up to Tilopa, the fisherman was always moving faster. Just as Naropa was about to give up on the chase, he saw Tilopa sitting on the edge of a large cliff. As he approached him once more, Naropa repeated his request to become his student, but this time he received the response that, "If you were really desperate and determined to learn about the teachings, you would obey my order to jump off this cliff without any hesitation, because you would be able to understand how important it is to follow the commands of your master." So following Tilopa's orders, Naropa jumped off the cliff, shattering all the bones in his body upon landing, only to have Tilopa touch him and heal him back to the way he was before he jumped off. Again frustrated, Naropa asked Tilopa for his teachings one last time, and Tilopa slapped him across the face so hard that he fell to the ground unconscious. When Naropa regained consciousness, his mental state of realization was equal to that of his teachers. Naropa was then formally accepted by Tilopa as a student and transferred the knowledge of the 6 yogas and meditation. The 6 yogas were transferred to Tilopa from the teachings of various gurus on his own path to spiritual enlightenment. They were passed down through the oral transmission as they were deemed too important to be given to anybody in written form. Tilopa received the teachings of the illusory body and transference of consciousness from the guru Nagarjuna, the teachings of dream and intermediate state from Naropa, and the teachings of luminosity from Lawapa, and finally the teachings of Kundali or mystic heat from Yogini Sumadhi. As the four oral traditions were finally merged into one set of practices in the mind of Tilopa, the lineage became known as Kagu, or the oral tradition. The 6 yogas were given to Naropa under the strict discipline of Tilopa. The first yoga learned was the heat yoga called Kundali or Tummo yoga, known as the foundation of the path. This particular yoga allows one to form a field of psychic heat that is generated and experienced through meditative practices. It has been stated that great masters are able to meditate in cold, harsh conditions with little clothing, and in some instances, the master can even melt the snow around them during meditation by creating a psychic field of heat. The Tummo Yoga's premise is that it burns up all obstacles and confusion in one's consciousness, because it does not deal with heat generation alone. One of the more important aspects of the yoga focuses on practicing prana, bindu, and nadi, which all help to synchronize the mind. In other words, our mind is originally split into 2 halves, the inner and outer kandalis, of which each control different functions of the body and mind. This separation of the inner and outer kandalis makes it so our mind can only conceive our world in duality because they are not yet synchronized with one another. What must be done in the mind is that we must eventually come to understand the non-duality of all things through meditative practices. When this happens, prana, nadi, and bindu dissolve together and synchronize the mind, where everything is on a single plane of existence. It then gives the person attainment of Vajra body, Vajra speech, and Vajra mind, giving the base for the other 5 yogas. Next on the path to enlightenment and the understanding of the 6 yogas is the illusory body yoga, which is the reliance of the path. The universe and its contents are nothing but illusions, and they have no substance in their nature. When one can completely understand and meditate on this concept, it helps to break away all attachments and realize the ultimate truth of existence and consciousness. This is known as mundane illusory practice. As one advances through this meditative practice, it allows one to realize that the 5 aggregates, 6 sense organs, and 12 dhatus are truly divine by nature. Upon completing this yoga, the universe becomes a giant mandala where all forms become deities, all sounds are mantras, and all thoughts become pure wisdom. Many people have had experiences where they feel they have control over their actions while dreaming. In the West, we commonly call it lucid dreaming, a practice in which the dreamer actually realizes they are dreaming and can live in that alternate world of consciousness. This practice brings forth our next yoga, the dream yoga, or the yardstick of the path. In this practice, one must come to realize that there is no distinction between their everyday lives and dreaming. The first step upon completion of this stage is the ability to recognize that one is dreaming, where they understand that they are dipping into their own consciousness in a seemingly different world. After that, the practitioner must begin to practice various spiritual exercises mid-dream, including the practice of the illusory body, which eventually transforms dreams into the next yoga, the practice of luminosity. The practice of luminosity is more formally known as the light yoga, or the essence of the path. This particular yoga is thought to be the key element on the path to enlightenment. Only through the deepest meditation can one experience illuminating Buddha nature in Tantra. We actually experience momentary flashes of luminosity in our own lifetimes when dying, fainting, or yawning. However, we just don't formally recognize them. In this practice, the major technique is to try and recognize this luminosity even when in dreams, as it is said that a great yogin can even meditate while sleeping. All of this practice will eventually lead to the experience of Dharmakaya, or reality body, that is the very principle of enlightenment. From attaining the power of luminosity, it allows the person to move on to the Bardo yoga. This practice is classified into three main types: the intermediate state between birth and death, what we would classify as our lifetime, the intermediate state of dreams, and the intermediate state of becoming between death and rebirth into samsara. This state between death and rebirth, called the mind body, is especially important because it is the period that decides which realm one will be born into upon rebirth. The goal of practice is to eventually realize the luminosity at the time of death. This allows one to practice the illusory body after the mind body is separated from the dead physical body, allowing